once in a while you ponder, you go, why are these people so fanatical about what I do? I don't know. You can't answer that. You probably could sit down and study and come up with a sheet that had maybe 50 different reasons of why, but in the end, it's a chemical thing. The listener and their life, what they're going through, and what you're doing and what you're saying. Something in what I say or what we say as a band, you know, at a certain age that the person is, connects, and it makes some sort of impact. Beyond that, who knows?
Fine, but it's oh, well, I hate that word. It's fundamentally true that people do, you know, and I see it so much in interpretations of lyrics, because I try to make them a little bit vague, because I either want people not to be hit on the head by it. A lot of people don't care about lyrics, and they don't have to. Again, I don't think that's important. The important thing is that they are affected by the music, and if they like it, that's fine. You need never pay any attention to the lyrics except the sounds. And I have to think of that, too. When I'm writing lyrics, there are sounds that have to be sung, and I think of them just in a purely euphonious way. It just has to be a nice-sounding series of syllables. And then if I can get an interrelation of rhythm in there that satisfies me as a craftsman, and then if I can get some other symbolism in there that might be even just personal, that will just make me happier with it. So nothing's lost, you know, nobody suffers. But when somebody takes that vagueness and all that big collection of images and possible interpretations and takes it in such a diametrically opposed way to anything I'd ever even thought of, let alone intended, it's a little scary, but you have to say, well, that's good. You know, they were able to take what they wanted out of it. And if they're a religious person, or if they're a paranoid person who sees devil worship everywhere, certainly they'll see that. You know, if they're a person that's sensitized to any of those things, that's what they'll find. The same as a person that's sensitized to literary references. If they're looking for them, yes, they will find them, but if they're not, they won't.
So have you had late-night conversations in the band trying to figure out why it's such a male-dominated audience?
No. No, not really. I mean, it's hard rock. We've always been maybe on the progressive end of rock music. It's been something that musician types have probably been more into this band, and consequently, I think that's mostly a male audience. We're not, you know, the cutest guys around, and we're certainly getting on in years. And I just think that for an audience, they look at us differently than they would with a younger audience with bigger hair and, you know, more of a trendy kind of appearance to them. Mm-hmm. Then they, I think, cross over to both a female and male audience.
The early days, you guys were dogged with some pretty hellish reviews. I mean, I went to the file last night and it was like, ow, ooh, ow. I mean, how did you protect yourself from that? I mean, on a personal level.
That was pretty hard to. I mean, a lot of the reviews we got in the early days, they were biting.
They were nasty.
Yeah. But, you know, you slag them off, you know, you slag them right back, and you go, what does he know when you're younger? And then every once in a while there'll be one that you'll pay attention to and will teach you something about what you're doing, which is, I guess, the role of criticism. But unfortunately, they're few and far between, helpful criticism. You develop a thicker skin, and you kind of learn to stop reading the reviews after a while. But, you know, you're just as distrustful of good reviews. I mean, every time there's a really overly great review, you go, what is this? And you don't really have as much any respect for it either. So, you know, you're never happy, really.
People like Bryan Adams, they always get called the Canadian ambassadors abroad. Did you ever feel like you were treated differently, or was being Canadian ever a factor when you toured?
I don't think it was, as far as we were concerned. We were just a band, you know, playing. But certainly from their perspective, it was that way. Oh, you're those Canadian guys, you know. So, and I guess because there were not that many bands from Canada touring America at that time, you know, it did make us something different and unique. But I don't know if we really felt it so much. I think perhaps in the earlier days, because it was different. I never thought, you know, in my life that I'd ever go to Texas or California back then. So it was, you know, a bit of a new thing. But we certainly got used to it after the 27,000th time.
Best of everything when the American contract had just been signed, and they had already started to set up a U.S. tour and everything. So that was all going on, but nobody believed it. I didn't believe it. You know, when the manager came to me and said, yeah, we got a band, you know, we got a U.S. contract and we're going to start a tour in August, and I'm like, so I've heard all those things before. You know, I'd be in a small band and our manager would go to Toronto and talk to the record company and they'd say, oh, yeah, well, yeah, maybe we can do something. So the manager would get all hyped up, and he'd want you to be hyped up, and he'd say, yeah, I think we're going to get a deal here, and we're going to be out on tour opening for, you know, Jethro Tull or something. Oh, yeah? So you believe it, and then there's no problem there because it's all positive, but when it doesn't happen, you know, you tend to be, being that young and being that ambitious, you know, you really get crushed by it. So I heard all this stuff, and I didn't believe it at all, that, you know, this band that I'd never heard of at the time could possibly have a U.S. recording contract. So basically we went off to the U.S. with all of that being true and in place, and disappeared as far as Canada was concerned because they still hadn't heard of us. And it wasn't until we started appearing on U.S. TV shows at the time and getting some attention by radio down there that suddenly, you know, to our great surprise, when we got the Juno for Most Promising Group in like 74, 75 or something like that, we were astonished because, you know, we couldn't get a high school gig in Canada at the time.
Felt like we were going against the grain, except when people would either tell you or things would not be going so great, and you felt like you were going against the grain. But really, we just did what we did. There was no great master plan, and there'd never been. It's like we're starting to write this coming Monday, and none of us know what the hell we're going to write. We just get together, and everybody's a little anxious, and something comes out. And that's really the way we've always worked. And you know, it's kind of naive, I guess, in one sense, but I kind of like it because it's a natural kind of way to write, and you just, whatever kind of musician and person you are at the time, sort of gets captured at that kind of moment. So they're kind of like time capsules in a way. When you've been around as long as we have, I guess we have a lot of time capsules lying around.
Performing now and that you're still a creative person you think are the same as the reasons when you first started?
Essentially, yeah. And this is really a good time to re-examine that because we're just about to start a new record actually next week. So all these things are uppermost in my mind, and I find that it was the excitement of wanting to do it. I mean, from the very beginning, wanting to play drums was kind of such an organic thing. The idea of it made me excited. And once I started taking drum lessons and that, the idea of getting home to play on my little practice pad was exciting. And it's just that pure excitement that was the draw all the time. You know, I had no plan. I didn't intellectualize it at all, and I didn't sit in school dreaming, you know, great schemes for success and that. It was just purely the adrenaline flow, I guess, that I got listening to rock music and thinking about playing it myself, and into smaller bands and starting to learn songs and then learning how to write songs and all that. It was always the same draw, you know. It made me excited to think about. And at this point now, facing, I don't know how many number of albums we're going in to start, like number 16 or something like that. But the point is I'm really fired up about it, you know, and I start thinking about all the things that we have explored and maybe neglected for a while musically, or new things that we can possibly incorporate, or different ways I want to approach writing lyrics, different ways to work on a drum part, and all the little tiny things that are very esoteric to me alone, but the important thing is that they all add up to and probably stem from a sense of excitement about it. You know, I'm fired up about going in there.
Dedicated you know, audience that they've really kept us going over the years, and I kind of look at it like that core is kind of always interested in, and it is, I think, real interest and curiosity as what we're going to do next. So they're really kind of involved in our growth, and regardless of which way we grow, I don't think they immediately turn off. They kind of listen and go, oh, this is what they're doing now. It's interesting. And then there's other fans that kind of come and go. When we do an album that happens to suit the popular mood, then, you know, it expands. And then when it doesn't suit the popular mood, then it shrinks a little bit. But that core keeps us ticking.